Welcome to the Journey to CEO Success. I'm your co host, Melissa Saunders, and I'm joined by Patrick Tian, award winning serial entrepreneur, renowned CEO coach, and best selling author recognized by the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and Amazon. In fact, his latest book, The Journey to CEO Success, is a #1 Amazon bestseller and the inspiration behind this podcast. Patrick, it's great to see you.
It's great to do this podcast every single time. Thank you.
Awesome. And today we are joined by Laurie Barkman. Laurie is a nationally recognized growth strategist, speaker, and CEO who helps firms build scalable, self-sustaining businesses that create more time, big fan of that, freedom, and long-term value. She's the founder of the Business Transition Sherpa, author of the Business Transition Handbook, host of the award-winning Succession Stories podcast. Wow, Laurie, when do you have time? Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Melissa, Patrick. I'm excited to be with you.
Thank you for joining our show today. As you know, this podcast shows to help CEOs have a more joyful and successful life. So welcome to the show. I would love to start though by you taking about 3 minutes and share with us what you do today. Tell us about firm today. What do you guys do?
I work with business owners to help them create more scalable, valuable, sellable businesses. And essentially, I'm a giant puzzle putter together, right? We are looking for patterns of things that we can recognize in our businesses that might be holding us back. What are those obstacles? Let's identify the pain points. Let's identify what is our business worth today? What do we want it to be worth in the future and why? Why is that important to us? I love how you talk about joy. What's the meaning that we're bringing to our lives, to our stakeholders, to our employees, our families? For many, many business owners, they've created something they love. They talk about it as their baby and it's their business. But then, unfortunately, they can get so tethered that they can't see the bigger picture. They don't understand how they have maybe an unhealthy codependency that their business needs them way too much. And when we're in that situation, it can lead to some more negative outcomes, not only with the business not being as transferable or attractive to buyers, but it also can negatively impact our relationship. So again, that's another reason why I'm so excited to be on your show today, Patrick, because talking about joy, talking about how our lives beyond business and recognize that, look, we're all human beings and how these things fit together. That's what I do with my clients every day. And I love it.
So today you help CEOs create an exit plan, exit strategy, or do you just help them at least be open to that idea? I asked that question because I know so many CEOs who just think that we don't need an exit strategy. We don't want an exit strategy. In fact, I know quite a few guys who have started second, third businesses. In other words, they've done an exit before, and then they still think, no, this one's a lifestyle business, buddy. I'm not going to sell it. But life changes, right? Like priorities change, and then one day they wake up, they go, I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. But they didn't create an exit strategy, so it's a challenge now. Do you see that?
Oh, I see it all the time. And yeah, just to answer your question, I mean, the short answer is yes. The longer answer is I don't lead with exit strategy. I lead with the notion that we're all in transition all the time. Change is constant. If we say the word exit, well, what comes to mind? It's really a point in time. It's an in and an out and it's over, right? And whereas when I say transition, we probably all think, oh yeah, I'm going from point A to point B. I'm going from here to here. And that's exactly why I named the firm what I did, Business Transition Sherpa. I'm helping my clients, guiding them on a journey for what? Well, let's define their goals. What is the what, right? What is the why? And then we talk about the how. For the people who want the next thing, that's great because those are the pull factors. I call them the pull factors. The positive things are going to pull us into our next thing. The more clear we are about what that next thing could be or why we might want it, we're going to be excited about it and we're going to want to go do it. Imagine the opposite where, we've got cement shoes. We're just sort of stuck. We're doing what we're doing. And it's maybe there's some negative things like our health or our spouse's health or our business partner. Maybe there was a death in the family. Our partner died. These crises happen that we can't control and we're not prepared for it. So now all of a sudden we have an exit because, we have to sell this business in a fire sale. Imagine the emotion with the first thing I talked about, the more positive pull factor thing. And then imagine the emotion on the negative thing. That's the push factor in contrast. And then we have the middle zone, which is okay. It's the middle zone. But one of the things is in the middle zone is a watch out is complacency, because the studies have shown, look, if the more we're doing to enhance the value of our business, prepare for the future, be mindful about our next thing, then there's going to be a positive correlation with business value. It's not a shocker. It kind of makes sense,
Yeah.
right?
What
And
is
then
the middle
likewise
zone
on the
again?
negative, it's going to be a
What
negative correlation with value.
what is the middle zone again? Slow down and tell me about
So
the
the
middle zone.
middle zone is a watch out in a yellow because let's say we are looking to retire. Well, based on what I just shared about value, you might say, well, is retirement, intention of retirement, going to be a positive or negative detractor, or might it hurt the business value in any way? And the answer is, well, it depends, because if we're envisioning a retirement in 5 years and we stop investing in the business, we've stopped investing in business development, we're not marketing anymore, we've pulled back on sales, what do we think is going to happen? Right? This happened. I was in, just to give you an example, I was leading a webinar and there were about 10 or so business owners in the webinar. It was remote. Let me just say that, a remote session. It was a private session. So it was only about 10 people in the room. But one of the gentlemen, I put him on the hot seat. I said, okay, Stephen, I'm going to put you in the hot seat. Are you okay with that? He said, yes. I said, all right, tell me what your vision is for your exit timeline. And he said, well, about 10 years. And I said, okay. Well, tell me about the business today. What do you do? Well, I'm focused on business development. Oh, well, tell me more about that. What do you do in business development? Well, not much. Okay. So over the next 10 years, how much do you think you're going to be spending on your time or anyone else's time on business development? Well, not much. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. So I got him to think ahead here and say, well, what do you think your competitors are going to be doing over the next 10 years? So if you just take this example, now you can see why I said it really depends in the yellow zone, in that middle of what we do. Do we get complacent and just put our feet up and expect, business to stay as usual? Or maybe we're going to have these external factors like disruption or other things in the market, competitive disruption, technology disruption, COVID, who knows what kind of disruption could come to us. And those might push us towards the negative, right? The push factors, the things that are going to make us want to leave the business. And so that is the continuum. And where we are along the continuum might shift. That's the reality of
Yeah.
life. And that's okay. But I think recognizing that there is a continuum, recognizing there's an age and a life stage to all of this too, we could talk about that. And that can impact where we are at any given point.
Yeah, something you shared really hit my brain where you said that 100% of owners will exit, but less than 10% have a written plan. And my question is, why is that number so stubborn? Why is it that CEOs avoid this conversation? And guys and gals, who are listening to this podcast right now, you're about to get a drop of gold here with the answer here. So why is it that this number is so stubborn? 100% of owners.
I think the number one reason is that there's a desire to just run the business. We work so hard as founders. You're a founder. If you're listening, you're a founder and you work so hard to build your business. You're so focused on it and growing and building your team. And that's awesome. And that's great. But many times we are not thinking of our end game. We're not building with the end in mind, with the end game in mind. We're building, but for what and for why and when and how? And it's when we can stop and think about it that we can reverse engineer. And I think it's a sign of the times also, Patrick. If we spend a lot of time working with people in different age decades, okay, so let's say they're in their 40s, they're in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and there's a definite difference. So we want to summarize, let's just call them the boomers, the Gen Xers, and the millennials, just for simplicity. I think there's somewhat of a generational, especially in the United States, there's a cultural generational impact on with the boomers that they just work their butt off. That's all they know. That's what they did. And there was no planning for it. So there's definitely that generational thing. The other observation I have is that the Gen Xers, it was just the generation I'm a part of, they're looking at the boomers saying, that is definitely not the way I want to do it. I see what they're doing and I don't want that. And also the millennials are looking at both of the generations saying, oh yeah, we're going to do it better than both of those generations. So I think the percentage is moving in the right direction for that reason. People who are listening to my show are probably 5-7 years out from a future transition, which is great. I have fans and you have fans of your show. I have fans of my show that are in their 40s and some in their 30s, and they just launched their company and they're reading the Business Transition Handbook and they're really glad because they're getting this information now. There's so many people, Patrick, I cannot even tell you. One of the first things they say to me is, I wish I found your book 10 years ago. I have a client who's 72. It's like one of the first things he said. I wish I saw your book. I wish I read your book 10 years ago. And
Yeah.
it makes me sad. It makes me sad. So I'm glad you're having me on the show. I'm glad we're having this conversation. So I'm trying to reach as many people as possible
So
with
one,
that
one,
little
one
nugget, that golden nugget that don't wait to exit. You can't do exit planning when you're
yes,
exiting. You
you got to
just
do
can't.
before, right? Wait before. Can't
That's
go. I
right.
want to exit tomorrow. What's my plan, right?
That's
So
right. Or somebody
yeah.
wants to buy my business. Now what? Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to explore with you before we talk about your personal journey is the joy in transition. In other words, I think one of my theories is that the exit process for a lot of people is scary, feels very final, and a lot of people may have difficulty finding joy in transition. And I wanted to know your thoughts on that. And have you seen how to help people actually have that process in a joyful way, I'm guessing?
Really, I'm trying hard for that. That's one of the things I'm doing. I have clients in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And for those folks, again, who are more than 7 years out from a transition, they're starting to get more and more excited about what the future could look like. So my client who's in his 40s, his intention is to 10x the size of his business. And he's super jazzed about that. And he's all in on it. My client who's in his 60s, he and I have been working on things to help prepare him for choices that
Mm,
he never really recognized, that by not putting certain protections in place for the business, he's going to be hurting his clients. And his clients are very significant municipalities in California. And we don't want to hurt those clients. That would mean
yes.
airports are suffering and things like that. So I think it's a really interesting question. The way to help anybody is that they need to be open and understanding about opportunity for change. And it might be starting with themselves. If they're unhappy, we got to unpack why that is. For one client I have, we talked a lot about his family and some of the impacts of his family on how he approaches being a CEO. And when we meet, we don't ignore his feelings. I think a lot of times as a CEO, we push our feelings down, we swallow hard. And what happens? We just stay in our head, and it's a very lonely place. So what I try to do with clients, Patrick, is really bring them out, talk about a lot of things, certainly with the business, but also, more personal things too, because again, as I said in my introduction, we're human beings, and yes, we're a business owner, but we're also a father or a
Yes.
friend. We have all these other identities that can bring us joy. And we want our business to bring us joy, but I also want this full picture of the other things in our lives that can bring us joy.
Thank you. You have such a unique background. That's why I spend this much time in this show on this exit thing, because I think a lot of my clients and friends could have really benefited from the conversation we just had. So let's transition now to your personal journey. I mean, what's amazing is I think you had a dream of being a rock star or something, and love that you end up running $100 million companies, which eventually end up selling to a Fortune 50. So tell me about that, man. How'd you go from like wanting to be a rock star, music, to running a company? Are you like the accidental CEO?
Well, I don't know that I would say my dream was quite to be the rock star, but I certainly had aspirations of something. And I think initially it was, I want to be a lawyer or, I want to be a CEO. Eventually I had that vision of being a CEO. I went to a school that you know as well. And my undergraduate was at Cornell
World.
University. There it is. There it is. And I studied human resource management, and I went to work out of school in the heavy industrial manufacturing. And after about 4 years, I realized, wait, I'm in the wrong industry and I'm in the wrong profession. I wanted to do startups. I wanted to do technology, and I wanted to do marketing. So my pivot was through grad school. And then that's what really put me on the journey to even be on a path for CEO. No offense to my HR friends, but I knew inherently that wasn't going to be a growth track for me to try to be more frontline as opposed to on the sidelines, is how I felt about it. But make no mistake, we are all in a people business. So the early skills in HR were very, very valuable for me, especially later in my career as a CEO. And that was basically then the trajectory. Was I worked a lot in growth roles like head of marketing. My largest budget was $100 million, which was pretty cool. My smallest budget, I like to joke, was $1, which is a joke, but not really. And so everything in between. And I was always top line. But finally I had an opportunity to interview just sort of out of the blue. A recruiter called and said, "Hey, there's a company in your backyard. It's a third generation company, over 120 years old. They're a leader in transportation and logistics in the North America, but they literally were 5 traffic lights down the street. And I was flabbergasted. I thought this was the coolest thing ever because they said in the interview process, we're not interviewing you for the next 2 years. We're interviewing you for the next 20. And this was fabulous. This was part of a long-term succession plan.
Wow.
They were looking for someone as part of a very open succession process to run one of the divisions. So at the time, my division was 100 million plus revenue business, and it was about 10% of the total company. So it was a pretty big company. My boss was the chairman and he was the third gen. He was in his 70s at the time. And it was a fantastic opportunity because that was my path on my journey, to this, how I got to where I am today, because I wasn't there for 20 years. I was there for 3. And the
Mm.
reason why was because we were acquired. We were acquired, as you said, by a global Fortune 50, which was an incredible, incredible experience. The transaction was over $1 billion, and it was very, very meaningful, not only for, the industry itself, but also for the family and stakeholders. There were millionaires were created out of that transaction, people who had joined out of high school and been with that company for,
Yeah.
30 plus years. And the community of people that we celebrated. And I'm sure there were a lot of mixed feelings about it. I was very positive about it. I was super excited to be, I was one of the insiders, right? I was one of the key executives who was part of the integration, part of the transition. I was all in, all my chips were in. I was really excited about it. But then it ended up being just 3 years because, that's how things go. And I was on the other side of integration. And when they integrated my group and they didn't need my role anymore, then
Yeah.
I was separated, and it's okay. It's all good. I look back fondly on it. I learned a ton. And I think it's what got me doing what I do today. When I thought about succession and transition and all the things that from Gen 1 to Gen 2 to Gen 3 that they did right. And there were bumps along the way, but in big picture, how that family accomplished that. It was amazing. It's an amazing story. And they went on to still do amazing things with how they're reinvesting their money in causes they care about and reinvesting in younger companies to help them along on their journey. And I have a lot of admiration for the family and for my prior boss. And I really do credit that experience with these baton handoffs visions and the questions I would have around, well, how do other companies do it? And what makes succession so hard? And why don't business owners plan for their future transition? If we're the founder, we're Gen 1, we tell Gen 2, here are the keys, don't F it up. And that's not succession planning. That's not transitioning with intention. That's just luck. So I just sort of set me on my journey to do things differently and help owners do things differently.
And you've had a joyful journey yourself. And I wonder, I'm trying to decode that here. And I wonder if that's because you seem to have a very transition oriented mind. In other words, you don't get fixated on, hey, I've got this job, I got this role. How dare you change it? It feels to me like when you start a role, you're already thinking transition. Like when a company interviewed you and said, not for the next 3 years or next 2 or 3 years, but for the next 20, you're already thinking that way. And I'm wondering if that actually helps you with all the change that happens so you don't get fixated. Like, I'm stuck over here. You take that away from me. I'm annoyed versus, no, it's okay because we're in constant transition, right? Like my role is going to change. And okay, if we get bought, that's cool. I'll have a different role over here. And then, hey, 3 years later, they didn't need me anymore. I got separated. Hey, that was pretty cool. So it appears to me that you expect life to be a series of transitions and you don't get stuck. And I think I surmise that that might be why you're able to find joy through all these different transitions.
I really appreciate you saying that. No one's ever said that back to me in a way that you did. And I love how you phrased that. I do think that I've always had a change mindset. I've always been wired for how do we improve and what's opportunity. Let's not get defensive. Let's look for the,
Mm,
what should we do better next time? You're right. And there are people, some in my family who just don't like change. And it could be the DNA of that's just how
yeah.
our chemicals are and how we're wired. There are I think there's the I think there's the change mindset and the openness, and then I also think about resiliency. When things go wrong or they don't go our way, we don't just drop on the floor. We pick ourselves up and we say, "Aha, we're going to just do it differently now." And I think that I think the combination of those things throughout my career. But yeah, you're right. I do lean in very heavy on change is okay. Let's just deal with it and let's just go.
And it seems like you do that from the beginning. So what I'm trying to say is that lots of people would be like, shit, I gotta change. Okay, wait, change is okay. Or it appears to me like you are from the very beginning, just of course we're gonna have change. that's life, man. Of course we're gonna. So it almost seems like you don't just understand it, but maybe it's a subconscious thing, but it's not just accept it, but you embrace it and you expect it. In fact, you may be the person that wakes up if your job didn't change after a few years and you go, what's wrong? How come something that it's weird to you that something did change? Because life is moving, and anything that's moving, there's gonna be change.
Yes, there's definitely people who have met in my career who they have the same job for 40 years. They're very comfortable because they don't want to change. They don't want anything to be
Yeah.
different and they resist it. I encounter a lot when I talk to family held businesses that are like second, third generation. They'll have long-standing employees and they end up tiptoeing around them. They want
Yes.
process improvement, but so and so is the blocker and so is going to feel threatened by this and so is not
Yeah.
adopting technology fast enough. And yeah, and so if we get stuck, we get stuck in our ways, it's really unhealthy, maybe in our personal relationships. And it also can be very unhealthy in business too. I think about having a growth mindset. I've always had that mentality. And again, it kind of led me to marketing and, some of those roles where we just have to be wired for growth. You have to be wired for change. And in a digital environment, I was an early online marketer, like, let's say the early 2000s for a very large apparel company, a global apparel company, online marketing. Well, what was happening back then was Google advertising wasn't even a thing. If we hadn't tried it and put in our 40 keywords, today, where would they be? They wouldn't be doing any of those things, which is just crazy to think about. Or if we're not trying AI as a business, we're not trying new things, we're not looking for opportunities. It just opens our perspective to that feedback that maybe the universe is giving us about
Yeah.
what we could be doing differently in our jobs or in our lives to be
Yes.
more joyful and be more successful, however we define that.
Yeah. So one of the lessons that I think our audience can take from this whole wonderful discussion is what I just shared about you is you found joy in just expecting change and embracing it and figuring out like how to be happy in that process. And I think that's wonderful. Whether you did it intentionally or that's just a gift God gave you, that's I think a real pearl of wisdom nugget that we can all take from the way you've been living.
Thank you.
So, it's I sometimes jokingly tell my friends who are stuck. I say, change is just gonna happen. You can argue with it, but it doesn't matter. It's like your opinion doesn't really matter. So it's like, if you're on the top of a building, you jump off the building, I promise you, you accelerate at 9.8 meters per second, fall to the pavement and die. Promise you. Okay. That's called the law of gravity, right? And you can go, well, I don't like that. There's gravity. Well, sucks to be you. I'm sorry. There's gravity. You don't get, it's not your opinion that matters. You can't go, well, I don't think gravity should kill me. Great. That's your opinion. Tough nookies, right? Doesn't really matter. And so I think that I've helped people with that a little bit by just reminding them that it's not up to them. I try to get them to imagine them as a little bottle cap of cork on on the ocean. The ocean goes up, ocean goes down. You're just this little thing bobbing around. You don't have control over the ocean. So I've gotten some people to just relax and go, okay, I guess you're right. I don't have control like AI. AI is the big topic now, right? AI is coming like a tsunami. I'm sorry. It is here as a tsunami. It's not coming. It's here. And you
Right.
can sit back and you can go, well, I don't like it. Well, I don't really care if you like it or not. It's here, man. Like, deal with it. And so you have a choice. I do think joyfulness and transitions, these are choices we can make. We can intentionally say, I I shall be joyful in this transition, or you can intentionally say, I'm gonna go kicking and screaming, I'm gonna drag my ass out of here. So it's your choice, man. But choice number two, no joy. Choice number one, lots of joy.
Exactly. Exactly. You can take the spirit of what we're talking about here and really apply it to anything. Many of us are dealing with aging parents,
Yes.
and some of us have parents that are very open to selling their home and moving into assisted living, and then others saying, nope, I'm going to die in my house. And then there's consequences for
Yes.
whether or not they'll get the right care. It's the same thing with a business. I mean, I've met, oh my gosh, so many stories like the 82-year-old former owner whose daughters own the company, not her anymore, but thank goodness because it was a prestige travel company. And in 2019, the daughters, I don't know the circumstances of how they got enough voting shares, but they did. And they outvoted her to sell 19. which ended up
Mm.
being a pretty good decision, right? And
Yes.
but to that, and so I met
Travel company, thank God they sold, right?
exactly, and I met one of the daughters in what year was it? Let's say 2022, and she said that her mother to that day was still banging her feet on the floor saying we shouldn't have sold.
Even
And that's going to happen. There's some people, again, I kind of look at the boomer
yeah,
generation that may be more of how they're wired than the Gen Xers and the millennials, because especially if your name is on the door, if you are the founder and your name is on the door, whoo-wee, right?
I
Identity.
love one last thing I'll touch on before we close up is I love what you say about getting rid of owner dependency. Because I also think that there's a couple of things going on in transition or lack thereof. One is owner dependency. The other one is in the psychology of identity. In other words, that lady that didn't want to sell, right? Her whole identity is probably locked up in that company. So, like you said earlier on in this show, codependency. So yes, the company has her name. In this case, she transitioned to her daughters already, which is good. But her codependency is still there. Like she probably couldn't imagine herself doing anything else. And that's probably one of the reasons why people get stuck. And then I always like to tell people, look, your life's work is here. And there's a time for you to harvest. And if you don't harvest, it's like your entire life's work is in here and the value degrades. It's like a fruit that ripened. It's time to eat it, and enjoy it. But you chose not to eat it and enjoy it. And now, yeah, the food's rotting. I'm sorry. So I think sometimes owners who've been at it a long time have an identity dependency issue where they just can't let go of that.
Yeah. Are we working are we creating the most expensive job ever? Or are we creating an asset that's attractive to another buyer, another owner, that's
Yeah.
transferable, and, that we're managing the risk? Just like you have a car, that's an asset. Are you protecting the value of that asset? You're growing. Maybe that value of that car is not going to grow, and that's okay, but you're using it and you're getting joy out of the car. When we have our business and we're the founder in the beginning, that's not a big slice of our net worth pie. But as more successful we get and the value of the business grows, it can be as high as 80, 90% of our total net worth pie, and the pie has grown. And
Yeah.
now when we think about risk and diversification, and you have an illiquid asset, there's no, there's no instant market for privately held company shares. Like you can't go to Yahoo and look up a value of the business. It's a privately held company, but we don't
Well,
take care of it. What are we doing to measure the value of that asset? Many business owners, like you said earlier, that, many don't have the exit plan. Well, they also don't know what their business is worth. They have no
yes.
idea. And
Yes.
again, it might be their biggest asset that they have no idea how to curate that.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you so much, Laurie, because I've learned so much from you today. And what one big takeaway for me is the need to keep thinking in transition phase. Like you're never out of transition, and to not think just about exit, but also about transitions through life. And life happens. You can't predict that. So this podcast is all about helping CEOs learn how to be joyful and successful. And so as we close up, I'd like you to share wisdom, something you'd like to leave behind for our audience, for them to be more joyful and successful. What advice do you have for them?
The concept that I have found has given me joy as an entrepreneur is a sense of return on time. When I
Mm,
went through the
Mm,
exit that I described, it
yes.
did put some money in my jeans, and I was one of the people that benefited from the transaction. And having that benefit enabled me to have some choice of how I would choose to spend my time. And
mm,
I think about the concept of return on time in a couple of ways. One way is through the people I spend it with. The other way is the impact I'm making and how much available time I have to spend as I choose. Right. So it's like the freedom kind of fits in that as well. And the other notion, kind of related, is a portfolio view. When I was a CEO, so let's say 10 plus years ago in this company we were talking about, I developed an idea that my own identity was always the company I was working for. I was never the entrepreneur. And so I wanted to have my identity that I could invest in. And so I came up with a concept of I am going to have a portfolio view. So I sit
Mm,
on boards and I give back to the nonprofits that I'm on boards for nonprofits and privately held companies, and I'm a mother and I'm a wife and family affiliations, right? And the things that I play tennis, like the sports or the things in my life that's very fulfilling. And being an entrepreneur is part of that portfolio. And it's not just one thing. And I
mm,
found it in my life where, oh no, when that one thing ended, right? Back to identity, when that one thing
mm,
ended, then, oh no, I got to start over on my identity. And I was done with that. No more.
Mhm.
And so I've been on 10 plus years of really working on this portfolio notion and layering on my return on time. And so it's
Beautiful.
how I choose. I'm getting fortunate and the lights are on, there's food on the table. So as an entrepreneur, that wasn't an issue. Um, and I could afford to make some choices. And that's how I look at it.
Wow. Thank you so much, Laurie. Hey, Melissa, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Lori, for being here today and sharing your story. We hoped our audience enjoyed this topic. And if so, please go and get a copy of her book, The Business Transition Handbook. I just checked, it's available on Amazon. And until next time, go out there, enjoy this beautiful journey we're on. Bye now.